So thank you so much for joining me, Sauda, for the Women Making History Now series. And I'll introduce you to Sa'uda Dunlap. Sauda, can you please tell us a bit about what you do and your work?
Sure. So I am Assistant Vice President of Equity and Belonging at Vibrant Emotional Health. I'm entering my 5th week, so it's a very new position. I'm also an adjunct professor at Columbia University School of Social Work, teaching power, racism, oppression, and privilege. And I'm also a psychotherapist at Amira for Her. So.
Terrific, terrific. I love the fact that you do so many different things and you really use your talent in different ways in each of them. I think that's absolutely amazing. So, Sauda, can you tell us a little bit about how you're making history now? Just a little bit about the work that you're doing?
Sure. So my current role as AVP is a new role. And so inherently it's history making. At the height of the global pandemic in 2020, which feels so long ago, many employers were going through what they were calling like a racial reckoning, which we know never happened. It's not real. But it was also a time where employers were sort of jumping on this bandwagon of curing or fixing racism, if you will, right? We had the hashtags, we had, the imprints and emails, the branding of Black Lives Matter. And then, 5-6 months later, when there's follow-up, there was no accountability, there was no investment. And so my employer has actually followed through and provided investment into this work and actually committing to systemic change. And part of that is the building out of the department that I now head, Equity and Belonging. So I'm in the process of building up a team and, working to make transformational shifts within the mental health crisis system. And so the primary role of my department is to develop strategy, to develop outreach policies, and service delivery and training. This is both internally within the organization, but then also externally, like just forward facing to the public. And, I work with a dynamic group of people, and we want to ensure that all identities are able to connect to this nationwide crisis hotline. So that within itself is just, it's powerful. And I don't take it lightly.
Yeah, it's absolutely powerful. And it's an incredible thing to do, and also so important. And I love the fact that your employer was able to actually commit and take a next step, right? Like there was so much during that time, and I'm sure some people gained some awareness, but it's like, okay, so what are you going to do with it? What's next? Like, how do we actually like make an impact in something that's been here for hundreds of years and been affecting us, So I think that that's terrific. Absolutely terrific. Yeah. So what's important to you about the work that you do?
This work is important because historically and currently, Black folks and other people of color have been over-indexed in negative outcomes related to mental health. And so this is due to systemic racism, right? It's important for me to be part of the group of change leaders because there have been many people before me and different entities doing this work. And so I see myself as like a continuation in the canon of folks who have done this work and who continue to do this work. Disrupt systems that never have been designed to fully serve all parts of who we are. We deserve access to quality care. We deserve equitable access.
Absolutely.
And my role is to be of service. I'm accountable to the people that I work for. It's not the hierarchy of the organization, it's the actual people I work for. And I see that as, family members, friends. It can even be myself at some point. Because again, these last few years, hopefully have taught us that we can essentially go from fully functioning able body to being on the other side.
Yeah.
Just at the drop of a dime, right? And so it's about us making sure that accessibility of services, quality mental health services are in place.
Right, absolutely. I think it's amazing, like the fact, I mean, you're clearly committed to dismantling racism, like in many systems and just across the board, and dismantling it specifically in mental health, right? And you're doing it on the macro level with this position, on the meso level with your teaching, and you're doing on the micro level as a therapist. Like you're really attacking it from every area possible, and I think that that's just phenomenal. So thank you for that. I think that's amazing.
Yeah.
How do
Yeah.
you feel? Go ahead. I'm
No, I was
sorry.
gonna say I would have never thought that in graduate school. I could have never imagined, just where I am right now, because in graduate school, and my just reflection, it was so limiting to like the expansion of what we can do in this field. It's very much focused on the micro. But if you've
Yeah.
done work long enough, you recognize like, wait, I can't do the micro without addressing the other two levels as well, right? Like, and part of the continued, the reason why I stay connected to doing direct service work is to make sure that I don't lose sight of being of service to people, and to continue to just get that context, right? So I can stay connected, and making sure that my accountability stays on track. And also just to keep messaging to folks that this is not you, this is systems generated. You're doing everything that you can, you're doing the best that you can to live and to thrive, but these barriers that you're running up against is not a personal flaw, it's a flaw in the system.
Right, absolutely. That's terrific. So if I had to ask you to talk about, and I know you do this work in so many different levels, but just whatever comes to mind to you as important, right? How does your work help others?
It's, this work is so, it helps me to connect to people, right? In all of the different roles that I have. And it's important that I stay connected. Social work, there's a delayed gratification, right? You do the work and it's not immediate, right? It's not like, you can build something and then you see like the outcome within, a month or so. Like,
right.
The work that I do is essentially planting the seeds, right? And so understanding that I may not see it come into full bloom, within the time frame that I'm in a position or working with somebody, but I take comfort in knowing that the seeds have been planted, and that, in the trajectory of a person's life, that they invited me to a small piece of it, just to be able to help them along, right? And that's so powerful, to sort of sit in that space of gratitude, to be part of somebody's life where you can literally change the trajectory of the outcome of their life. I would definitely say, because I've had the privilege of working with, everybody, from children to adults, but working with and on behalf of young people has been the most rewarding. They are brutally honest. They don't have the filter yet, to sort of curve their thoughts, and there's beauty in that, right? Like, we're getting a raw response around what it is that they actually need, and their interrogation of systems, which we don't listen to young people enough. They know what they want, they know what they need, and they need to be part of like these larger conversations, right? So that's been rewarding, just overall. But I would say, like, currently, particularly, just in my own personal growth, and all of those roles that I have in the various levels, supporting Black women in their journey, their mental health journey, to be specific. So many of us like carry the weight of the stories that we tell ourselves about ourselves and each other. And we literally arrest our bodies, and we're unable to show the fullness of ourselves. So helping Black women to release those stories and then create their own individual life plans, and then watching them live and thrive as they have been introduced to the possibility of creating whatever it is that they want to create has been so inspiring. And then also healing, right? Like there's reciprocity in all of this work because of just going back to that interconnectedness. You know, as I am supporting my sister, I'm supporting myself.
Absolutely.
Right? So even though the person on the other side of it may not see it in that way, that's how I see it, because all of our liberations are connected. So that's been the most rewarding for me. That's been inherent, just joyful, right? Like there's pain, there's layers, like as people are unpeeling and interrogating themselves, but then at the end of it, as they're coming through and figuring out how they do this thing called life, it's like there's no section. We get to make it up as we go along. Like that's the beauty of it. So that's been super joyful, more recently than anything, just watching that and being invited to be a part of it.
That's absolutely wonderful. Wow. I think that's absolutely phenomenal. Thank you. So Sauda, I'm gonna ask you this question, of course, like keeping, confidentiality in mind, right? But is there a story that you'd like to share about how you've made a difference, and whether that's with like an individual, a community, a family, a program, an organization, wherever you want to go with it, but just something you can share about how you've made a difference?
Yeah, I would say, I previously worked at a large social service agency in New York City where I manage a school-based mental health program. And again, working with young people. So this program is for middle schools and high schools. And so while I didn't do direct service work, I had a staff who did. And, we were able to work with the school on all three of those levels, right? The micro, the mezzo, and the macro, which is very foreign and different to New York City schools, public schools, right? The historical way of providing mental health services in schools is a young person is identified, you fix them, and then you send them back without interrogating all of the, the systems that are impacting this young person. Community life, the community within the school, the administration, right? How they respond to our young people, how they see them. And to be part of that, I did that for nearly 4 years. So to be part of implementing and developing that program, and to giving the schools a new language and a new way to support young people has been so powerful, right? So like there are a myriad of stories that I can touch on that former staff have shared with me. I'm thinking of one where a young person, again, this was at the height of the global pandemic, where young people really came to our program in particular to just process everything that was going on. And, we were one of the safe spaces. They deemed our program a safe space to just talk about race and how they are perceived. And I remember one of my former colleagues sharing just his story about being perceived as like a criminal just because he was tall, Black man, wore a hoodie. A few years prior to that, he would have never been able to say that, right? Yeah. Like he held on to this, but to be able to say that in person, not be judged, and just to have somebody just hear him out, just to hear him out, just to hear him out. Like, this is my experience. And then to have the person on the other end validate him to say, like, it's not you. right? And it did so much for that young person who historically in that school was seen as a threat, as a problem. But in actuality, he was just anxious because of how he was being perceived.
Yeah.
Right. So for us to be able to give him the language and to what he was feeling, and also just to validate his experience. Like you can literally see the weight lifted off of him.
Yeah.
And it's stories like that. It's especially with young people. Like I often think, like, where are they at now? How are they now seeing themselves in the world? Like, was that seed that was planted? Did it get embedded enough to where they actually internalized it and then integrated it into their lives? So I would love to believe that that is the case, because that's just the way my brain functions. So, but yeah, absolutely.
That's absolutely terrific. Well, thank you so much, Sauda. This has been informative and inspiring, really. So thank you. And thank you for helping and making history now.
You are so welcome. Have a good day.
You too. Bye-bye.